This video is intended to help you write the critical response essay in Comp 2. It provides a step-by-step guide for writing a rhetorical analysis. The first step is to choose the article that you will write your essay critique over. Remember that you're picking an article out of the Practical Argument textbook. You may want to look through the table of contents to see what articles have been written by professional authors and look at the descriptions of each article before you choose. The best article for you to choose is one that you feel you can critique or respond to, not necessarily the one that you find most interesting or even the topic or argument that you find most interesting, because you're not responding to the content so much as the author's argument structure. After you've read the article, then your second step really is to decide your overall response. Is it ineffective or effective? Do you feel like this overall argument, particularly for the intended audience or the intended time period when this was published, do you feel like it will reach the audience correctly? The second step is to write the introduction paragraph. Your introduction paragraph will always start with the author and the title of the article. Any response, analysis, or critique will always start with what you're commenting on. You can also include the year it was published, the publisher, the original publishing place, anything like that, or sometimes students just include the main idea of the article. Main topic. The second thing that you'll include in the introduction is a brief summary of the author's main ideas. This is about 2 to 3 sentences long and doesn't need to be real specific. It just can be kind of in general, what is the author doing in this article? So this is solely summary information. The thesis then is where you bring in your critique. So the thesis is your overall critique or assessment of the article. You might think about what you find successful and unsuccessful in the article. You might think about potential issues that a reader might have reading through this article. Most of the articles, because they are from professional authors, are going to be really well set up and great arguments. And so there's not going to be a lot that you'll find that is an issue or that doesn't work very well. So you may end up just focusing on a lot of things that you find successful about how the author put together his or her argument. So here's an example. I used the article in the textbook by Dan Ariely's, and it is titled Essay Mills, A Course Lesson in Cheating. You can find it in your textbook on page 406 if you want. So this was my introduction paragraph. I wrote, in Dan Ariely's article, Essay Mills, A Course Lesson in Cheating, he explores websites where students can purchase essays. So that's my first introduction to this is the topic. The article explains his method, about how much he pays for these essays, and some sample sentences from the results. So again, more summary. He concludes with his main point, which is that instructors don't need to fear this method of cheating from students. So if you can identify the author's main point, thesis, purpose, whatever, that would be a good thing to put in your introduction paragraph. Then I get to my thesis. Despite not addressing opposing viewpoints, Ariely writes a successful argument that combines ethos with humor to make his point. So this is a thesis that gives me a critique to work with, as well as some positive aspects of the way that he wrote his article. So because I want to start with something positive, I'll be showing you the outline here in a minute, but I've chosen basically 3 things to write about, and I put them in my thesis. So this is the body paragraph, so we're going to choose 3 to 4 aspects of the author's essay and argument to critique. If you need help with this, you might think about what the author does really well, what could be improved on, and thinking about the amount of evidence, thinking about where the evidence comes from, thinking about which rhetorical appeals are prominent, that kind of thing. If you're looking for critical elements to look at, on page 78 in your textbook is a list of questions for critical reading. And so you might think about the kind of audience the writer addresses. You might think about the evidence, if it's convincing, if it's enough. Does the writer seem to exhibit bias? If so, how does it affect the argument? That kind of thing. We can go further with this and use some rhetorical analysis. This is out of chapter 4. On page 113 is a checklist for rhetorical analysis, and this takes us a little bit further into the writer's situation, the writer's purpose. It might include things that the writer uses like similes and metaphors, rhetorical questions, but also, again, things like evidence, organization, logic. What does the writer include that works really well and doesn't work well, particularly when looking at what is the basic structure of an argument and does this represent that? Don't forget that as you write your essay, in these body paragraphs, you'll be including specific examples from the article itself. And remember, for this essay, you don't need to do a lot of the in-text citations, you just need page numbers. So if you decide to include a specific reference or a quotation from your article, right at the end of that sentence, you'll drop that page number in in parentheses for our citation. So this is what my sample body will look like. So I'm sitting down to write my essay. This is my outline. I decided I want to start with the positive things and then end with the thing that could have been improved on. So I write about the ethos, the writer's credibility first. So my first body paragraph will be about his establishment of credibility. He's a professor conducting an experiment, and these are the results of his experiment. He uses questions pretty frequently and then immediately answers them. It feels conversational, so it's a little bit more interesting to read through that way, but also adds to his credibility because it feels like he is talking to us, talking us through it. Humor is another part of his argument. He uses examples and questions to make the article a little bit more interesting, but also a little bit more humorous. Some of the examples that he provides are pretty crazy from the essays that he gets back. If you read through the article, you'll see what I'm talking about. He likes to provide commentary, and so there are a couple of like one-liners in there. And then his audience, he has a sure sense of his audience in this article because he's writing to other instructors who are worried about their students cheating, and so he writes in this manner where other instructors would enjoy reading it and feel better about the whole situation. So he uses humor for that. Now, the critique that I have, of course, is that it's missing a lot of elements of an academic argument. It was published in the Los Angeles Times, so that's probably why there's a lot of that lacking, but he could have addressed some opposing viewpoints, which really are why students cheat, why they go to paper mills. He also doesn't have any sources, which he doesn't necessarily need because of the purpose of the article is not intended for academic use, but he could have included perhaps some expert opinion and things like that that may have enhanced his overall article. So that's the critique part. So that would be the body of my essay. I've got 3 shorter body paragraphs that I could include, and then finish up your essay, of course, by writing your conclusion. The conclusion is supposed to be pretty simple. We've got just a summary of your ideas. Make sure that you think about the effectiveness of the article, so that might be cycling back around from what you discussed in the introduction, and you only need about 4 to 5 sentences. So this would be a sample conclusion. Having not written the body of the essay, I obviously might change this if I were to write the whole thing, but this is what I came up with. Overall, Ariely's argument was successful and effective for his audience of fellow educators. So again, cycling back around to my main point from the introduction. His main argument was clear, and his use of humor and personal experience added a conversational element. Notice I'm not repeating a lot of the language from the introduction because it's such a short essay, we don't need a lot of repetition. Despite not using traditional argument elements like counter-arguments, he was able to provide enough evidence to support his idea. This article was published in 2012, so it would be interesting to see if paper mills have improved since then. So this last sentence here is, if you've studied concluding sentences before in an argument, we often use that last sentence to project forward. So this would be a place to think about, how does this affect the overall scope of the topic? But you could also discuss if you liked or disliked it, enjoyed it, didn't enjoy it, that kind of thing. Last element of your essay, don't forget your works cited page. As you can see, I have it written out. There's also a little item in Blackboard for you to follow. Author's name, the title of the article that's in the textbook. The textbook information will all stay the same, and then you'll change the page numbers to match the article that you have chosen. So this video has been about writing the critical response essay.